Move to approve with those changes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 4A, let's just take, well, item 4A, board meeting minutes of September 11th.
Move to approve.
Actually, I have a correction for that.
Okay.
I'm pulling it up right now. Just give me 1 second. So on that meeting, there was it was request. Sorry, let me pull up the agenda here. So there are two, for both minutes, there are some corrections.
Okay, so
It's just taking
September
time.
11th?
September 11th, yeah, there was it was our governance training. I was wondering if there are any minutes recorded at all for that meeting, and if not, then why not? So we don't have any minutes recorded for our governance training. It is very just straightforward, and I was wondering, is there a policy or is there some kind of format for minutes of special meetings or meetings like governance trainings where we are recording anything, or is there no recording of that?
We have just, as we did here, just said we worked with the consultant on board governance. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's
No.
no actual, those are the minutes, that's
Yeah,
it.
those are the minutes.
So it's not recorded. We don't typically record our special board meetings, but what we are going to discuss at a future board meeting is exactly what you had brought up before at the last meeting, and also how we pull consent. I mean, all of these things that we didn't get to cover at the governance workshop, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, so we will discuss that, but these are the minutes for that day.
Okay, yeah, I just want to note so that if the public is looking for that information so they know why there are no minutes and no recordings for that special meeting. Because I know we have recorded special meetings in the past, but if there is any discussion around that, I'm sure we'll have that at a later date. I was just wondering why this, which was like a 3 or 4 hour meeting, 5 maybe, had no minutes. But that's my only question for that.
Okay,
So these are the minutes, but I
They're the
hear what you're
minutes.
saying. They're action minutes. It's a type of minutes. It's not like recording the whole conversation. Yeah.
Okay.
Move to approve.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And board meeting minutes of September 14th.
I have some corrections for that. One is for, there are in public comments, about 12 comments listed. There's no detail other than whatever's name spoke regarding the garden and Westmore Park project or something to that effect. Number 11, Monica Casey, there's more information there. It's the only comment that has detail. I will ask that we provide fuller detail of what everybody said. If not, be equitable and just state for the record that they all spoke regarding a topic and there not be any further detail. So which is it going to be?
Okay, so I see that it notes what topics they were speaking on.
Correct.
Minutes do not have to be detailed, but, so were there any other comments or that you want to note?
Well, I guess first I'd like to change it because I believe that Monica Casey was speaking to the same topic. So just so that there's no discrepancies or it would mean.
The same thing.
Yeah, because I believe she spoke regarding the garden and Westmore Park project or something to that effect. So I think we should just change it to be the same thing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Move to approve with that change.
There's actually another correction there, Vice President Lee. In item number 10, we have, I requested a discussion on how board meetings are being broadcasted and the possibility of having interpreters present in board meetings, which is true. I also requested that our communications director be involved in that, if not lead that. And then Superintendent Presta had some comments as well. I'm not sure if you'd like to state that for the record as well, because it wasn't captured here, but.
So would you like to amend the minutes to show that you, Mr. Ochapinti, requested a communications report at a future board meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Move to approve with those changes.
Second.
I'm sorry, did Superintendent Preston want to comment on, you asked for color, that
Yeah,
meeting?
no, I don't want to add anything. I think that's good.
Okay.
Okay, so motion.
I motioned and
And I
Ms. Zingaro
second.
was on the second.
Okay, with those amendments.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Start with our student trustees. You are not a student trustee. Start with our two student trustees.
My name is Ava Crotty. I'm from Terra Nova. The last week at our school has been all right. I've heard a lot of students say that it's the first week that's really felt normal. It was our spirit week for our first rally, and that rally was a good success. It was outside, but everybody had a good time from what I've heard. I was absent that day. And there hasn't been really any issues besides I've heard some theft in the bathrooms because of a TikTok trend, I believe. I know some soap dispensers got stolen. And I think a mirror was also stolen as well, so that's something we're dealing with. But, yeah.
Nadia Shaw from Jefferson.
Nadia Shaw. I'm from Jefferson High School. I was told that there's no report to be given.
Mr. Ochapinti.
Yeah, it's looked like we're closing out the summer on a high note. It's good to see that the students are back to school and returning to some sense of normalcy, of course, a new normal, and everything that comes with that. So just wishing everybody, of course, a safe and healthy return to our campuses and continued, I guess, vigilance in terms of our safety. In addition, I'm proud to see that a lot of people at our prior meeting stepped up to speak on communities they feel are very important in our community, especially youth, former students, alumni of our district here and neighboring districts, and throughout the Bay Area. I think the issues that we're speaking to are very important. Not to speak on it too long, but I think it bears mentioning because one of the public comments was directed towards me by the teachers union president, a union which I actually belong to as a former employee of this district and a former teacher in this district, as a former student and alumni, of course, and a current trustee. I have to take all these things with the gravity that they're leveled with. And so for me, I take every comment seriously, and I do weigh that with, I think, all the integrity that it should be considered with. I will, again, remind our board and the community that my job here, like any board member, is as a public official to ensure the community has a voice here. And so I would encourage everybody speaking, including our union representative, to weigh the value of the voices in our community with the same integrity that they consider their own, especially for the youth that grow up in this community, who go to school here, and who put their lives and their voices on the line when they're out here advocating for things through COVID-19 that actually show the bravery and the risk they're taking to speak up for their community, including the environment, which we know worldwide has been criminalized for generations. So any threat against any public official, whether it's through the election process, to me can mean less unless you're targeting people from the community who are even former students where you were a teacher. So that I take personally, take it professionally, and I take it politically, because all those things are threats. They're inappropriate. At the end of the day, they're disgraceful, in my opinion. But I'm glad the community has a chance to hear how some people in our community are characterizing what ultimately amounts to the privatization of our public land and our public schools. This district office is a school site. It was, it is, and with my hope, it will continue to serve that purpose moving forward. I would encourage every board member, every faculty, staff member, of course, community member, students, families, anybody, past, present, and hopefully future, to take an investment in this issue, of course, and to continue to support their involvement in this process with a timeline that does respect to the community that has not had a chance to have a say in the future of Westmore Park, in the future of Serramonte Del Rey, in the future of any of our school sites during a pandemic is not an appropriate time to discuss these matters. However, in defense of those who have spoken up, it is my job to have to speak to it. So I will continue to speak to it on that timeline that's been imposed on our community, unfair as it is, but I will continue to encourage people to have an open discussion rather than fast track this at any level. It's disrespectful to our city, our county, our state, and per federal law and directives from the Secretary of the Interior, who is an indigenous woman, Deb Haaland. This is not in line with responsible land use planning or urban development. And I want to encourage people to think about climate change, the wildfires in our state, and worldwide natural disasters when thinking about the value of a community garden, trees, or any green space or open space in our community, the impact that that has on our youth, the families who not only live here now, but those who've been pushed out, displaced, and those who are hoping to move back, stay here, who cannot currently afford to live here for that foreseeable future unless we as a school district take a responsible role and make change in those issues, including rental relief, environmental justice, and the larger scope of social justice. And I mean every word of that. So my voice is one, but I'm not alone, and I know that. So I will continue to encourage the community to speak up and not feel intimidated when the power of a labor union letter and endorsements is being weighed. I can tell you, I am not here for endorsements. I'm here for the people who voted me in. I am from this community. I was here before. We are still here now, and I have every intent of fighting with the people here in our community to preserve that for future generations. With that, I'll yield my time and hope everybody else has something important to say about the matter moving forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Garrett? Hey, so I just want to say thank you to the other trustees for showing up here today to voice their report and giving a voice to this table and our community as well. I would like to also say that I am here weekly as it is my job to look out for the best interest of the students and making sure that they have amazing teachers and staff here that are going to stay here long term so that they are here to educate all our children, my children that will be coming in, and you know, and also grateful to them to serve our community for past students who are leading the way in the future as well. So, and also today is the day of the Autumn Moon Festival, so I would like to just mention that as well. Hope you all, probably not, but ate mooncakes in celebration of it. Not that you might like it or not. So I just wanted to read just a little excerpt of what it is. So it's the Mid-Autumn Festival is an important part of the festival celebration of the moon. And really, it's celebrated in China. So, I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's just another reason to give thanks and be together and celebrate our family and community, you know. So, you know, being here, I celebrate you all. I give thanks for all you do here for our community and continue to educate and closing the gap and providing equity for our students. And thank you to the amazing teachers and staffs who continually do that for us on a daily basis. And also, I definitely, again, want to be mindful and want to just encourage, if you have not gotten your vaccination, to please do so, because I have just gotten a report from a friend that a friend of his passed away from COVID. And, but also prior to that, 10 days before, the friend's son had passed away from COVID, and he was only 22. So it was really discouraging. So I hope that any community members who are skeptical about getting vaccinated to please go out there and, you know, just be safe and you know, because we want you to be here and be with us. You know, we worry about all of our, you know, my children are not able to get vaccinated at this time, so, you know, that's a worry for me, to be mindful of that. So, other than that, thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Charlie?
So I'll just piggyback off of a little bit of what Ms. Garrett just said. I've had a family member pass away from COVID. I had an aunt in Indonesia who passed away from COVID about 6-7 weeks ago. she wasn't vaccinated, even though, oddly enough, in a nation where at the time only 5% of the population was vaccinated, her family, my family over there was, except her, because she had health issues and she was afraid. And a situation arose where a young boy who came to visit the home where my aunt lived, he turned out he was sick with it, and she got it, and she was diagnosed on a Sunday, and she was gone by Friday. And in Indonesia, the rules are that they have to be buried within 24 hours, and so it was pretty quick. And so again, for everybody out there who's on the fence or you're unsure, please just do it, because you just don't know. You just don't know what might transpire, whether to you personally or to somebody in your family. And and thinking about the teachers and staff of this district, and I see some of you in here, and I am so blown away every time I hear from you. I either see the posts on social media or the emails that I receive, or the conversations we have when we're on site, and I am just so grateful to each and every one of you for the work that you do. And it's certainly my mission to make sure that we can continue to take care of you in the best way that we can. We know that there's a lot of structural issues that really make life a little difficult for us when we compare ourselves to other districts in the area. But to the extent that we can find creative solutions to take care of our teachers and staff, we will do so. And that is my commitment to each and every one of you. It has been my commitment since I first came on back in November of 2015, and it will continue to be for as long as you would have me up here. So thank you all for what you do. I am grateful to you. I said it last week and I'll say it again. My kids have been the beneficiaries of the work that you have done. And seeing my daughter's success as now a working woman in the state legislature, and seeing my son's success halfway through his college career, I know that they wouldn't be where they are today with the foundation that they received here in this district. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Ms. Salahuddin, would you like the upper board report or any comments?
I made it.
Thank you.
I'm okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Are you okay?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. So we had our Student Advisory Council meeting last night, which was always inspiring, and we're always learning more about what they report to us, because we're not on the ground. We're not teachers, we're not students, we don't necessarily know what's happening. So it's always good to get input from them. And I went to the back to school night at Oceana. It was great. I got to go to some classrooms, and I talked to a lot of parents and families, reconnected with some families I haven't seen since their kids and my child were in elementary school together. So they may not have gone to middle school together, but here we are in high school, and I still get to see them. So it's really awesome. And I do have to agree with Mr. Ochapente. I am here also for the people who voted me in. Yeah, I totally agree. I'm here for the people who voted me in, for our entire community, the entire JUHSD community. And, at back to school night, they were overwhelmingly in support of our project at Serramonte Del Rey, which is very heartening because we need it. And with that, I'm going to move on to the superintendent report.
Okay, thank you. I am going to reiterate that the student advisory meeting was awesome on Monday night. I guess it was just last night. It feels later in the week. It's only Tuesday. And it was actually really, really nice to hear the kids, the students, say that school's starting to feel like school again. And I heard it from really all of the school sites. So at Terra Nova, they were talking about their first outdoor rally. At Jefferson and Westmore, they were talking about Club Rush. There's dances coming up. It was really, it's like why we are all here. And it made me feel really, really good. So thank you. And thank you to everybody who's making that happen. I was at Back to School Night at Oceana, and it was really great to sit in. This time, I've sort of done it differently at the different Back to School nights. Some I've sort of lingered outside and talked with parents and community people. Some I've gone into the classrooms quickly. At Oceana, I ended up sitting in maybe only four or five, the whole presentation of the teachers. And so it was really, it was awesome. It gave me a really full picture. So it was a really good night. And I too, I was superintendent in a feeder district and a partner district for years. And it's been nice seeing those little kids, I remember them being little babies, and now they're in high school and their parents are like, whoa, what are you doing here? No, so it was really, really nice. And then I just want to put a plug out there for anybody who hasn't heard that we are having a town hall tomorrow night, tomorrow, September 22nd. We will send out, it was in my weekly message on Friday. We're going to send out a reminder and probably like an email blast tomorrow. You can also find the information on the district website. So I do hope that you join us for that. We're going to speak about different topics, COVID. We're going to talk about the Serramonte Del Rey development. And so it'll be an interesting night. And we promise we're going to do our best to keep it to 1 hour. So I hope you join us. And that's it for me.
Ms. Casey for the AFT Local 1481 report.
Good evening. I just want to talk about a few things that have been happening these past few weeks. We're getting ready for negotiations. We have 5 contracts. There's a team of classified, there's a team of certificated, and then sometimes we'll meet all together. So right now, we're just meeting with the membership, talking to everyone, getting ideas of things that people want to bring to the table from our side, and eventually, you'll be seeing that, what we bring to the table. And then we'll start negotiations, I believe, in October, towards the middle and end of October, we'll start the official negotiations. This will be my first full negotiation, so I'm a little nervous. And I just really appreciate working with fabulous people. Even though they're on the other side of the table, we still seem to be able to figure out how to move forward. Which brings me to the next idea is that, I meet with other presidents of other unions up and down the state and the country all the time. So we share best practices with each other, we share ideas, and some of the times I hear from them and I say, oh my gosh, I don't know what we're doing, we haven't done this X, Y, and Z, and then other times I'm like, hey, here's an idea for you all that we've done. So for example, one of the things I'm really proud of is that we gave a stipend, or we're giving a stipend to people for completing the trainings. And, the whole state has to do those trainings. But everyone's looking for, how can we help people out? And so they were really excited to hear what we had proposed together. And it was a nice thing to share with other people. One of the other things I wanted to bring up was that, we're having meetings in person, but we're still, the union is, but we're still doing Zoom. And what I noticed is at the beginning of the pandemic, of course, we were all Zoomed out. It was awful, Nobody wanted to spend another minute on Zoom after school. But we still had somehow the most attendance to our meetings. And so it seems like people are able to get to those meetings. I mean, at 7 o'clock, as there's not that many of us here in the audience, but people are able to Zoom in and get heard and say their piece. So I've been doing, I guess you'd call it hybrid meetings, where people could be, hey, if you want to come to the meeting, I'll bring snacks, but I'll also will Zoom in. You can Zoom in, and we've had the highest rate of attendance. we've had, just like most of our meetings that we have had, pretty much anything that we've done in the past year or so, we've had quite a bit of attendance. So I just wanted to mention that that has been something that I want to continue. That's the lemonade from the lemons of the pandemic is Zoom. That was a big lemon, but we're making lemonade out of it. And I also want to say I really have been having a great time on campuses, seeing students. Similarly, at the end of last year, poking my head in and students saying hello. Just happy to see people still, even after how many weeks we've been in school. So that's been really nice. And that's all for tonight. Thank you.
Esther, do we have any COVID response updates?
We have just a really brief one. There's no really big update, but I do want to just provide the update that we're very, very close to securing weekly testing. So we're going to be going with Valencia Labs with color, and we're working with the state to get people, actual bodies, to come and do the testing for us, that we don't have to use our own staff, because it's really difficult to do that we have a shortage of people. So we're very, very close, and we will keep you posted.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to number 7, consent agenda.
Consent?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And do we have any public comment?
There are no public comment for tonight.
Okay. And our discussion items, wellness data. Ms. Beswina?
Good evening, President Tejada, members of the board. I'd like to introduce our wellness coordinator, Melissa Ambrose. She would like to give a brief update on wellness data for the 2021.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to put my computer up because I did a silly thing. And in your well, I don't know how it works with the PDF that you guys get, but I have, I put little notes to myself. So we don't want to see those notes on the thing, so I apologize. But I'm really grateful to be here and to see all of the board members. And I want to say to each and every single one of you, I really appreciate the work that you do to support our students in the community. And what's really amazing is that we all do it in a different way. And that, together creates, for a little rinky-dinky poor public school district, a pretty spectacular environment, actually. So I really appreciate all of you. And that is also particular about, what's going on with wellness. So last year, so just to let you guys know what I'm doing, last year I was asked to bring more data to you all. And then luckily, Associate Superintendent Baca is a crazy tech genius type, and taught me how to collect data from Synergy, because before the wellness counselors, literally, I'm not joking, we're doing little we had all these different ways of doing it, but it was really confusing. So we now have a uniform way, and even this year it's going to get more uniform. And again, you all know that data is only as good as the input system. So there's no way for me to tell you that this data is 100%, right? So the data that I'm going to show you is based, most of it, on Synergy logging, meaning every time we see a kid or do something with a student or a family, we put a little note in Synergy. We follow all the Board of Behavioral Science laws about confidentiality and FERPA, but we say that we saw or worked with the student or family. So I just want to give you that caveat that if someone didn't put in a log note, we don't have the data collected. So I'm working constantly about let's log. So so this is the data from last year. So we're collecting data again. It just felt like the beginning of the school year was a little crazy. So I apologize, it's a little bit late. I'll do a brief mention of the data this year, but really that'll be another board meeting. So you guys are gonna just get to see a lot of me, which is really fun. So just because we teach students to give a little roadmap, I'm going to talk about general data. Then Associate Superintendent Balsuino thought that it would be really useful to compare our data to the California dashboard demographics, just to see, like, are we overserving, are we underserving, what's going on? And we can't know exactly what's happening or the why of what's going on, but it's interesting to see the patterns. I'm going to talk about our suicide assessment data. And I was able to compare that to past years. The general data I was not able to, which I'll explain. And then I think you guys all know about Care Solace, which is this, they changed their name. It was Care Concierge, and now they call it a Care Companion Service, because I think a lot of people didn't understand the word concierge. Basically, if you need mental health or addiction support, you can reach out to them either via email or web or text. It could be confidential, it could be anonymous, and they'll help match you via like what kind of health insurance you have with support that's out there, which is critical right now because I don't know if you all know this, but most private practice therapists, whether they take insurance or not, in the Bay Area are beyond full. They're not even calling their waiting list people back, which I wish they would say that on their outgoing message. So if anyone's listening that's a therapist, so that's where we are. Why is it not moving forward?
Because you're not in charge of it.
Because I'm not, Jake's in charge of it. Okay, Jake, cool. Thank you.
Jake. He just
So-
wanted everyone to say Jake's in charge.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm going to tell you about this data is that I only drew from active students in Synergy. So if we had a student that left partway through last year, their data wasn't there. So again, it's like the data gets confusing. But what's kind of amazing is that the wellness staff, so this was 9 wellness and school social workers, 1 Star Vista therapist who's housed at Jefferson 4 full days a week, and 5, we had a wellness intern at every site. It was predominantly virtual, as you know. We still were able to see 32% of the population, or work with, or do assistance of support, which is pretty amazing, I think, considering, because not all kids need wellness support. And so 32% isn't bad. So we saw a total, or worked with, or did something with, a total of 1,309. That constituted over 11,000 individual sessions. And 1,500 parent guardian contacts. Now, we might work with a family and log that we had contact with them 10 times, if like on 10 different days I called guardian, right? So that doesn't mean we worked with 1,500 different parent and guardians, but we had that many contacts. 393 referrals, so we do constantly consulting with therapists, with psychiatrists, with CPS. That's not actually CPS, sorry, but those are outside consultations and support. And then virtually, predominantly, we attended 869 SST, SAT, 504 IEP meetings. Do any of you want me to tell you the acronyms for those? Yes, okay, great. I think I reversed them. So SAT is the Student Assistance Team. Every school has one. And students of concern come to this group of people. It's usually a school counselor, a wellness counselor, administrator, a teacher, and maybe other people who want, staff members. And we need to have several factors to trigger concern. Attendance, or lack of attendance. Behavior, so concerning behavior. It could be behavior like I've got my head, I'm not showing up to any classes last year, right? It could be, I have my head down. It could be, I'm throwing things at Rosie, right? Like, so behavior could be a wide range of things that we want to try to make sure our biases are weeding through the behavior stuff. So attendance, behavior, grades, and then maybe outside information, right? We may have heard, a family recently just lost their housing. We want to make sure that the loss of housing doesn't then have a cascade effect. So we talk about the students in SAT, so that's SAT meetings. If we think a student needs, we need to bring a parent or guardian for further support, then we have what's called an SST, which is a student support team meeting?
Study teams.
Study team. Sorry, I'm looking at Associate Superintendent Balsuino because now that I've not been out of school for 3 years, I'm forgetting these acronyms. A 504 meeting, so we'll meet with the parent or guardian, we'll come up with supports. So you don't have an SST without a document afterwards that's what are the kinds of things we're gonna do to help this young person. And then a 504 meeting is a meeting when a student has a medical reason to warrant additional supports. So like a classic, typical one would be, I have diabetes, Miss Ambrose doesn't let me anyone eat in class. I get to eat in class because my blood sugar is low. But they go much further and deeper than that. A lot of 504s are for young people who are suffering with anxiety, particularly social anxiety around like presenting in class, things like that. And then IEP meetings are meetings for any student that receives special education services. And so wellness staff, I'm just going to call us all wellness staff instead of wellness counselors and school social workers, attend those kinds of meetings. Thanks. So these are the mandated reporting right here on this slide. So we dealt with 7 bullying and harassment cases. This number is going to be wildly different this year because we weren't being told by the students during virtual time what kinds of things were actually happening. And if it was happening, it would have been hard to weed it through because it would have been in their virtual world, which we would then have to determine if it was school related. But they weren't talking to us very much about that, and maybe it wasn't happening. I don't have any social media, so I'm a little bit a Luddite that way. But we dealt with 7 cases. We had 16 child protective services or children, youth, and family services calls or cases. And they don't always tell us, CPS doesn't always tell us the result of those, right? So we are the mandated reporter, we make the call, and then sometimes, especially in the virtual reality, we never hear back. We did 62 suicide assessments, which is, considering we were predominantly virtual, a good number, but wait till you see what we do in a regular school year. And 16 of our students were hospitalized as a result of our suicide assessments or someone else's. So sometimes we were calling therapists and saying, my virtual assessment is not enough. You need to meet with this family right away. Because we didn't know enough about what was going on always. And then we had to get the law enforcement involved for mandated reporting reasons 26 different times last year. And that includes things like consulting with them, sexual harassment or rape, adult protective services reports, which we sometimes have to do about adults who are protected by the law, and things like that. So that was last year, the not cheerful data. But what I want to say about that is that the beautiful thing about this data is that they were still talking to us. They were still reaching out to some degree. And so for that, I'm very grateful that students felt safe enough, even in the weird virtual world, to reach out to people that could support them.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Cool. Okay. So now.
Touching the mouse, I promise.
Great. Okay. So we're looking, then what I did is compare it. I don't want to belabor all of this with you. But the thing that was interesting to me is that most of the data correlated. So what you see here, and also just so you guys know, I should look at my note here, that what the California School Dashboard, their categories of ethnicity, do not correspond to our categories of ethnicity, number one. Number two, they use different language. So I did my best to match it. Their category, Asian, combines like a whole bunch of groups of people together. And that's just one of the things that our world is still working on. So the blue is who we served, the demographics of who we served, and the green is what the California dashboard says we have at each school. I'm pretty sure I did it by school. God, I hope I did. Anyways, I did?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so this is Thornton, and you can see it pretty much correlates. Not perfect. It's not perfect and again, this is California dashboard language in the realm of Hispanic and white, but it was pretty correlating around. Here's Jefferson. I was like, wow, check that out. Pretty amazing. So what makes me happy about this is that it shows me that the general sample of students feel comfortable in the same sort of grouping that they're coming to the school in percentages with. So here's Westmore. So we are serving 10% or more Filipino students less than the dashboard says. And when we look at our suicide data, that's there too. It's interesting. So it's possible that there's cultural reasons for that. And it's possible that we show this to the wellness staff and make sure that they're reaching out to all the groups of students. I'm not entirely sure about that particular one. And then at Oceana, also a discrepancy in the Latinx population. So another thing where we could look at and make sure, just some curiosity with teachers, are like more Latinx students being sent to wellness counselors. So there's just some questions that we can ask ourselves that are really healthy and really positive for us to ask. Also, I will say that at Oceana, until this year, we only had one wellness counselor, and it was me for a long time, and then after me, it was another person who was white. And so I think in the schools where we have counselors of color, sometimes kids are more open to seeing them, and that is totally understandable and reasonable and healthy. So it could possibly be that. We won't know why that is, but it's something for us to ask. Terra Nova, almost exact. And now we're going on to assessment. So then we did, I think I said 62 assessments. So here's assessment by school site. Thornton's not on here. They didn't need to do any last year, which is like just wonderful, really, because the Thornton wellness staff were working really hard. They weren't not seeing students, to use a double negative, my favorite thing in the world. So they just, they were really in touch with their students, and a lot of Thornton students do have outside support systems. So, and then by grade, this is pretty typical. 9th and 11th grade seem to toggle for the highest. It really kind of, and I'm going to guess, just a guess, that this school year we're going to see a higher rate in 11th and 12th. And you can all understand why. I think the stress level of 11th and 12th graders, after missing a full year of school, many of them, and then another half, and then being launched back, quote unquote, into the regular world, and thinking about college and finances, I think what I'm understanding from the wellness staff is they're pretty stressed. So this is the last 3 years, which I thought would be helpful. And you can see 2018, 2019, we did 166 assessments. So that's more of what we would call pre-pandemic normal, whatever normal means, nothing, but right, fully in person, not mass, not virtual school year. And then 2019, 2020, we were moving along towards about that number because we stopped in early-ish March. And then you can see 2021, but so you can see how the 9th and the 11th grade sometimes, I'm not going to say the word compete, but then gender, this is typical. In fact, I'll say that in our school district, more students who identify as male seem to come forward and allow us to do assessments than in a lot of other places. Like you'll see this data can be much more heavily skewed towards teens who identify as female. So I feel really grateful again for that our students seem to feel comfortable in a more balanced way across gender. And then I think, as you know, in the trans community, non-binary community is really a community that we have to be very, very focused on around mental health and particularly suicidal ideation. Here's the ethnicity breakdown, but I have another slide where I compared it to the California dashboard. I am quite concerned. The Latinx number is almost exactly corresponding to our California dashboard, but that I feel like that's a lot of young Latinx people feeling unsafe, and for lots of reasons, and I feel so concerned about that. So here's that slide. It's like completely exact to California dashboard in the Latinx community, in the white community. And then the Filipino demographics reflect that of Westmore, students who are coming to be seen or students of assessment. So last year we dealt with a much fewer high severity, and that hospitalization rate is about the same. Just so you guys know, right now the hospitals, as you can imagine, aren't hospitalizing. Like a year pre-pandemic, if we sent a kid to be assessed, there's, many of us could say they'll be admitted or they won't. Like, we would just know the sort of criteria, and we're having jaws on the ground right now where we're having kids not be admitted and not really seen and sent home, where we would never in the past would that have happened. So I feel concerned about that. I also don't think going to the hospital ultimately is very therapeutic. I think what it does is it gives people some time and space. It gives parents and guardians the ability to sleep, and it gives the young person some space away, and then it gives the family time to regroup, but it isn't ultimately therapeutic. Young people don't often come out of the hospital saying, I'm tons less suicidal than I was before I went in. But they will come out saying, I promise I can be safe. So hospitalization is it is something for us to pay attention to, but it's also follows the same sort of trends and cycles that all the rest of society deals with. Like, the hospitals are overfull, our medical professionals are completely stressed. So we can imagine that they're going to be admitting fewer kids than they were before. And there's not a lot of bed space in San Mateo County. So here's what 2019, 2020 hospitalizations look like compared to 2021. These must be percentages because those numbers don't match my previous numbers. And then Care Solace, really quick. This is, so as far as people who reached out to Care Solace, it was predominantly students and their families. A lot of that was because wellness counselors put referrals through, and we can't put a referral through without a parent or family consent. So this was sort of like just throughout the calendar year. August last year, we had a lot more cases. They're not seeing a lot of our students. I mean, we're not getting a lot of students and families through this system. Oh, thank you. Sorry. A warm handoff is when we say to Care Solace, here's a family, and then the Care Solace says, great family, I've made contact with you. Yeah.
So what do you think is the reason for there being so many warm handoffs in August that didn't get to appointments? Do you know?
We're all, well,
No.
yeah, there's a lot of reasons. One,
Because everything else is equal, that's all.
yep,
That's
so Kaiser and Care Solace are not friends. And a source of endless frustration for all of us. So that's one reason. Number two is that August, school started, and we were all super excited about Care Solace, and so we were doing referrals. And then sometimes families say, yeah, you can do a referral, and then they don't contact the Care Solace person back again, right? So they just kind of let the communication go. Then we kind of were like, oh, we really have to explain to the families what it means when we're doing a referral, what their responsibility is as far as following up. And so I think we got our referrals better.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
That's not percentages, that's 1, 2, 3, 4,
These are
5,
literally number of
5
cases, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not very many. I'm not psyched about this data, honestly. Yeah. But we're also not referring a ton. So it goes both ways. I would say, and I don't have the data for this, that well over 50% of our families have some form of Kaiser. Could be Medi-Cal Kaiser, could be like employee pay, a private pay Kaiser, and then Kaiser just, this doesn't help us. Care Solace does nothing for our, and Kaiser, as you all know, I'm guessing, right now, if a young person needs therapy, there's a minimum 8-week wait. And if once they get in, they get one therapy appointment a month or every 6 weeks if they're lucky, and then the rest is group. And they're asking us if they can have groups and therapy appointments during school hours because their after hours are so packed. So it's Kaiser as a mental health system isn't working right now, and they know it. So this was staff and family. I apologize. So staff and family refer themselves. We don't have any referrals. Here's students and family. So a lot more referrals from us for students. And you can see interesting, like how few of them actually fall into care, to actually have an appointment. And Care Solace is aware of this. We're all aware of it. We talk about it meeting after meeting after meeting. It's hard to follow through. And the reason why we have Care Solace is because calling a therapist over and over and over again and then finding out that their caseload is full is a big drag. And most people are like, then I'm not going to try to go to therapy. I thought this was interesting. This is students and their families by ethnicity. So it's way greater than our percentage of white students in the district overall. And I think this talks about culture and mental health and stigma and things like that. It's also pretty weird to call an agency you don't know, right? So that makes sense to me. Staff in our family, I have no idea about our staff demographics, but I'm guessing it's probably similar. I have no idea. And I did lots of emails last year, just so you guys all know, to the staff saying, here's Care Solace, here's Care Solace. It's in every signature line of every wellness counselor, so we're really trying to push it. And then the last thing I'll talk about is our 2020, the updates for this year. Really exciting stuff going on this year. We grew by 3 people. So the MHSSA grant gave us 3 new staff. So there's no school that has fewer than 1.5 mental health counselors. Thornton has a school social worker, and then the halftime, Carla Talkoff does halftime wellness. And I put an asterisk there and at Jefferson because those 2 school social worker positions are funded by Title I money, not through the MHSSA grant. But Oceana, Westmore, and Terra Nova all gained a school social worker funded by the MHSSA grant. Oceana, we could only hire a half-time person because by the time, it's a long story. I think you all can imagine mental health positions, we could work anywhere right now. There's so many openings, it's mind-boggling. And then there's all districts added. And as you know, because we talk about it, belabor the point, districts pay more than we do, and we lost a lot of really good people in the interviews. Luckily, we got on the interviews pretty early in the game, but we got an amazing person who's half-time at Oceana. So we feel very grateful about that. We're doing clinical supervision, individual and group, for the wellness counselors who need it. So we have a lot of wellness and school social workers who are licensed, and then we have a whole group that are moving towards licensure, which is only to say that people are really interested in their continuing education as mental health practitioners, and I think that's really beautiful, so we're providing that. We still have we got a new crop of trainees or interns, we're supposed to call them trainees now. So there's 1 per site, and the Daly City Youth Health Center has 1 or 2 trainees at every site except for Thornton. And the reason they're not at Thornton is Thornton doesn't have enough space, and also they don't have enough, they have a smaller student body right now, so they just don't need it. And then obviously the Daly City Youth Health Center trainees are at the Daly City Youth Health Center for non-school hour appointments. So there's some really solid, so anyone who has Medi-Cal or any kind of public insurance, there's a lot of availability. We're working really hard on the synergy logging. We're doing a lot of trainings. So the wellness staff is, I've been doing a lot of trainings and they're doing a lot of trainings from outside trainers. I'm working on revising all the wellness protocols and policies and getting some outside expert advice on that, which is great. And then you've heard, I'm sure, Project Wayfinder, a social emotional learning curriculum, is being implemented in all 4 comprehensive high schools to 9th and 10th grade to varying degrees. So some schools have adopted it into their English 9th and 10th grade, some schools into their advisory program, some schools via health. And so we're not pushing or policing people around how they use it this year. We want the adoption to be people use it, they like it, and then other people want to use it and like it. And I think that's it. Sorry I'm so long-winded. I really always tell myself I won't be. But that's what you get with me as the wellness coordinator, is a lot of words.
Questions? I'll start with our 2 student trustees. Do you have any questions for Ms. Ambrose? Yeah, okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions? Yeah, Mr. Ochapinti.
Yeah, first off, thank you for that presentation. One of the things that I've noticed as a teacher is, in terms of special education, a lot of our students regularly engage these issues, right? So that we're talking about them, I think, in the open, especially with mental health. And seeing the data really helps, so I think people can understand that there are a lot of people who are having, ideation and just, struggling with issues to the point where they cannot see a way out. Clearly, it's a global issue, but I think addressing it here, especially in the Bay Area, as not just really important, but really in step with larger policies. So I appreciate the initiative on this.
Can I just say one thing about that?
Yeah.
Trustee Ochapente, I want to be really clear that that data includes special education students, but not the number of appointments and family contacts that special education students might have had as a service of their IEP. So anyone that gets mental health services through an IEP, we didn't include that in the data because then, not to say that it would skew the data, but those students get a lot of service as they need it, and they should. But so, like if one of those students came to a wellness counselor with a crisis that was outside of that service, that would have been counted.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
important. I think,
just to make sure that that's clear, so that it doesn't look like,
Yeah, no, you answered that question, I think, in your presentation. I was wondering, because you're in attendance at those meetings. Your presence at an IEP meeting is helpful so that people understand how they can access services. Sometimes students don't want outside services. Sometimes they do. And it depends on what works best for them. So I just want to acknowledge that first. A lot of things jumped out at me, I think, that are really good for us to talk about. A few of them, one, I appreciate you mentioning, in terms of hospitalizations and bed space and, hospitals being just in the center of a pandemic to be a place of safety. It's really difficult in any condition to consider your chances of coming out feeling more safe, right? So there's always a question of, how can I access this? And I think reassuring our community that those are safe spaces, but also trying to navigate a pandemic, as we learn different things. And of course, the Delta variant is really sometimes out of our hands, and sometimes there's something we have to encourage our youth to do what they know, is be resilient, but it's a big part of the process. So that, to me, the data really spoke to that. And I have a few questions, but I mean, just to note that, like, some of the disproportionality in the data is interesting to see, that a lot of our youth in Pacifica are disproportionately feeling, they're having assessments. That's a huge issue. I would, think that's an issue that's discussed among youth and, of course, at our schools and our communities. I would look forward to seeing more of that input and seeing how we can better serve, as a district. The Daly City Youth Health Center has done a great job, I think, of getting out all the sites. It is the, title of the Daly City Youth Health Center, but of course, we have partners in Pacifica doing great work. And so I think letting youth know that they can access those services and, of course, promoting them, doing that outreach. Our students are the best people, I think, to reach their peers. But we have staff, and it's good to see that we have a lot of new staff on board. So just noting that. And, with regards to, when we talk about the statistics in terms of demographics, in terms of race, class, gender, or at least race and gender, and as somebody who is biracial, who's Latino and white, I see this data and I think, there's a disproportionate number of those demographics in suicide assessment by ethnicity. And so understanding where that is, not just in Pacifica, but also in Daly City, and how we can address that. I know it's being done. I just think noting it that the Youth Health Center, the Daly City Youth Health Center, put together an event with the Filipino Mental Health Initiative and a bunch of other agencies locally, community-based organizations. So that work I would encourage. And the educational outlets we can provide in our classes, whether it's ethnic studies and navigating what that means. In the middle of, I think, a couple years of really just an awakening of social justice in a lot of people's minds across the board and all those issues, and how we can all engage that as people in our community, but especially for our youth, who I think are under pressure to figure it all out and feeling like they have to figure it out through Zoom or, under the pressure of having to hold a job. And of course, for many of our students, doing that while feeling they have to still make the grades and having the outlets they need. So I think a lot of those impacts, I would encourage, continued work in that area. I should note too, especially with respect to our community, many of whom will come from multi-generational families in their households if they're working and thinking about how they're impacting with health. The other part is public safety, and just addressing the culture and the politics and the economics of policing. The fact that the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office continues to be one of the highest deporters in terms of deportations to the state of California. Even though our sheriff is Latino, is completely unacceptable. In many ways, it's a human rights violation, especially with our state currently having a sanctuary state law. So reassuring our community that they are safe and they are protected seeing that mirrored at the level of local police departments, and of course our existing policy where we don't have cops on campus, where we make sure that students know that, and then our staff feels, I think, prepared to explain those things to our students, is a huge need, but it's also a major area for us to explore in those conversations listening to students when they're talking about dress codes and definitely voicing not just their opinion, but their experience and how they would feel more safe on campus is a reflection of how they would feel more safe in our community. And so, I mean, that's a conversation I think for all of us to have, but also something we can take some action on if we're looking into how we're promoting our services and working with the county health services. I know Daly City Youth Health Center has done some work in trying to coordinate that, and of course with our new COVID director to kind of explore that. I guess the last thing I just want to ask, and maybe this is my question, is how can we integrate this work into what we're doing with community schools or wherever we left off with community schools? I know that RAP services, State Superintendent Tony Thurman was speaking to this recently too in regards to COVID, that a lot of these services in terms of education and health overlap in so many areas. And of course, criminalization, profiling and whatnot, that in creating a new community fabric, we have a framework for that, and many school districts have explored that. Not that you have to have the answer, obviously, but where can we go, right, with community schools where we have laid some foundation and working with not just our partner districts, but neighboring districts here in San Francisco and throughout San Mateo County and the East Bay as well. Where can we kind of expand that? And maybe this is a question for our superintendent as well, primarily, to think about where can we move with community schools to make sure that we can kind of, one, share this data, and then create the community conversations that would explore it further.
I think that's a great question. I do remember with excitement when we were all talking about community schools, and then I have honestly no idea what happened. I do know there's money for districts that are exploring it, but I don't know. And what I'll say is that, again, we're like a tiny school district. We have 4,500 students or something, and nothing like what SF Unified has. They have wellness centers, and we are somehow, through decisions that you guys have made and other decisions, we're making little mini wellness centers at each one of the schools, kind of on our own, not on our own, but like we're doing it without all the funding that SF Unified has. And then because we have Daly City Youth Health Center, it is a drag for a kid from Terra Nova to get up to Daly City Youth Health Center to get confidential reproductive health services. I will say that is like, especially these days with what's happened with transportation and COVID, it's like even slowed down more. But we have essentially within our 5 schools in the Daly City Youth Health Center, a community school, which in some places, would be a giant school, but it's too big of a geographic area, right? And so, but I do feel grateful. There's a huge amount of collaboration, and I will say that I meet with the Director of Student Services for Jefferson Elementary School District every other week. We go to several collaborative meetings together. I talk to the head of mental health in Pacifica School District very regularly. She's just back from maternity leave, so we're trying to get like a regular schedule. So we're really trying to make, in our own funny grassroots way, all these connections to work. And I will also say, Trustee Ochapenti, that we are very concerned about the newcomer students, undocumented students, and students that are coming out unaccompanied minors. And that what I know the wellness counselor that was doing some of those assessments at Jefferson, and a number of those suicide assessments were for those youth. And so we have real work to do with that population so that they feel supported, they feel seen, they feel understood, and they don't feel at jeopardy being in our community. So we're aware of that and, have deep desire to somehow magically fix that situation. But that doesn't seem to happen, and so we're just going to keep working one step at a time so that community feels supported.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. So I do agree that, the community schools model is something that I strongly believe in, and that, it's something that should be run internally and not externally. And I know, I've been in contact with a lot of really successful community schools, and they're all internally driven. And I think that was one of the key issues with the last attempt. But if you look at the key pillars of community schools, it is strong and proven curriculum and high-quality teaching are the two grounding, foundational things for a successful community school. I mean, it starts with those two things. And then the third one is inclusive leadership. So, in order to have successful community schools, we need to really make sure that we can keep and retain our teachers and staff, and so that they can implement the curriculum, and that we have the strong leadership that's ongoing and doesn't constantly rotate. So, and I think that also really goes into our mental health and our wellness program too. It's making sure that what I'm afraid of is that, we have this, students have been asking for this for a while, we implement something and then we can't sustain it. So I would like to get, and this is not something for you, this is maybe something that I can look into, but I would like to get, if the data that I would love to get from you, if it's possible, is how many of our students are on Kaiser, if we know, so that we can start that advocacy work possibly with Kaiser, because that's going to be a huge issue for them. And to me, we can help. We can help them.
I hope so, Kalima.
I know, but
I'm telling, so unfortunately, the Kaiser data, it's the families fill out the Synergy form now digitally.
Yeah.
And it's not, the medical insurance is not a required
not a
field.
requirement. Okay.
And so it's just sorry about that, really hard to know.
Okay, and even if we get general, it doesn't have to be, I can just say this is ballpark, and it's not everyone is self-reporting, but
Right.
I think that's a conversation that we should start having, because mental health is a huge part of the COVID recovery. And I don't think that at the county level, they're aware of the disconnect.
Who they are. Sorry, with Kaiser,
Yeah.
they understand what's going on. Well,
Do
the
they?
mental, I don't know, BHRS,
I mean, I never assume, like, you think, what
Fair
I mean,
enough,
and you go
fair
in there and you
enough.
have that conversation and they're like, 1 + 1? So that would be good. So I could just bring it up too in another avenue. And then I think too, when the things that jumped out at me at the dashboard, when we're looking at Kaiser and who has Kaiser, Pacifica doesn't have a high level of Kaiser, is Daly City. Right, so it's easier to get access to mental health if you're not on Kaiser. So, that's also skewing some of the demographic data. I think it's just, what insurance do you have? So, to me, like, that's another thing that I feel like as board members, when we're having these conversations and we're talking about advocacy, it's not always about the money for us, but also they're not able to assess mental health services outside of us either. The other thing is crisis, and how do you get services in a crisis, and students' awareness of where to go if they're on campus versus where do they go if they're off campus, and if that, do we have any idea if students know, like, okay, I'm having a mental health crisis, this is what I do? And if you guys know, do any of you know?
Back of their ID card.
Were you aware of that? Yeah, no, okay, yeah. So we might need to start promoting that a little bit more, that it's on the back of the ID card to, in what to do if you're having a crisis.
that's really excellent feedback, yeah.
And then I am just really happy, thank you, because I know when I first asked for, can we break it down? But to me, this is really good information to have in terms of thinking like how Care Solis is being utilized, and how this all fits into our ongoing discussion about mental health, which is, again, another huge unfunded mandate that school districts are being asked to pick up. So how do we navigate that, and how do we, again, talking about the level of funding and the grant, and how the grant may go away, like, how do we navigate this new extra thing that we have to do that's necessary, and I totally feel that we need to do it, but how do we do it in a way that's sustainable, looking at the data that's presented before us? So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I just want just a few things. Trustee Sullivan was very thoughtful in her words, and I definitely agree with a lot of things that she said, as well as Trustee Ochapente. I just want to say, Ms. Ambrose, you're amazing. As always, I am very always thinking highly of you because I always see the passion that you have for the welfare of the students, because if they are not well, they cannot focus on their education. So I think that's really important. I just want to make a comment that I do agree that it is a struggle, to reach students and families of different ethnicities, because there is a barrier of families and students reaching out for help. And I think for some cultures, especially ours, it's hard to go out there and ask for help. So, and to be able to change the mindset to say that it is okay, that you can come and talk to us and be comfortable with that. So I think that's always, it's ever evolving and ever changing, and especially we do have a lot of generations here, right, in families that are together, and there is a stigma. So, I do see that, and it's an ever evolving issue, I think. But thank you for all the work that you do and continue to do, and really do appreciate you. So thank you, Ms. Ambrose.
I'll be brief. Just one, thank you for all the data. This is really helpful. I was pleasantly surprised, I suppose, to see how many touches we had last year, the 11,000 appointments. That blows my mind, actually. And when I think about when a few years ago, Trustee Salahuddin and I took two of our student trustees up to Sacramento for some advocacy during CSBA's legislative day, and the two student trustees spoke to Senator Scott Wiener at the time, specifically about student mental health. And for us to be in a place now, because of this grant, to be able to staff up the way that we have and to be able to
Without
offer
his help.
services. Right,
Without his help.
right. Exactly, very key.
Yep.
And to be where we are now, and really the challenge is going to be, how can we make this sustainable? Again, it's one thing to have the one-time funds, but now that we've got it, let's not let it go. Let's find the creative ways to make sure that we can do this, and that's, one of the things that I want to be able to try and find over the next year, couple of years. That's because when we first got the grant last year, that was my first question. Okay, one-time funds, now what? So let's hope we can get there and find a creative way to get us there. Thank you.
Yeah. So when do we have to use all of the funds for the grant? Is it?
We have 2 more years. Yeah, after this school year.
After this school year.
Yes, sorry, yeah. Mhm.
Really good day to have. Thank you for everything you do for our district. I at first was worried when I saw that you were leaving Oceana, and then happy that you were here to take on this huge task. And if I could ramble like you.
Oh, God, you'd be
totally.
sad.
It's a problem. No, you are not rambling, really. You never apologize to us.
Okay, thank you.
It's so great to get all this information. If you notice, I'm nodding my head because it's stuff I don't think about, but I know is happening and I was there. And to see that, like Mr. Lee, like everybody said, that we saw that many students last year is actually good. And I know our family was affected. And I know that now it's not unusual for my daughter to say, hey, she and her friends decided they needed to contact a wellness counselor for their friend. So those things happen, and there's no stigma to it. Of course, the friend was totally annoyed. Well, who ratted me out? But it was because they could see what was happening. Let's see. And also at Jeff, we had lost a social worker, and I was really, I saw that we lost a social worker, and I was concerned, but we immediately hired a new one. So I thought, wow, we are, so thank you to HR
Yeah,
that.
oh, yeah.
Completely for, staying on top of this, because it's super, super important. I'm really interested to see how things go this year, but I think, like you said, we need to make sure that students know.
Yeah. Thank you all. The last thing I'll say is obviously none of this, like I have nothing to do with this. The wellness counselors and the school social workers are amazing human beings. We have really an exemplary staff. I feel so honored and so humbled to work with all of them. And again, like what I always say in interviews is like, we don't pay well, but we have the sweetest, kindest, most compassionate district. And I think a lot of them agree, that.
You do have something to do with that, by the way.
Well, but no, I'm not doing the 11,000
Right,
appointments right
right,
now.
but-
So they're, they're amazing. And right now, sure you can understand, they are working breathlessly. And I'm not excited to show you the data for this year because it's already really fairly extreme for 6 weeks in. But they're amazing people. So I want to make sure that that's known that all of this is really about them. And I feel honored to work with them.
Thank them for
I
it.
will. And
We'll let them know, like, what can we do to continue to support, because we want to keep them. And to expand on that, I mean, really in education, what I've seen is you really don't see outcomes for any new initiative until like the 3 or 4 year mark. And that's, we're going to run out of funding. So it's going to be hard to show.
Yep.
So really looking at how do we keep this core group
Yep.
possible, and then how do we get it going into a few more years so that we can have really tangible data to go out and hopefully get more money.
I agree. And I will say one of the benefits we have is that we do, because of my position, we provide clinical supervision, meaning every hour that they work can count towards their licensing. In SF Unified, they get one, it's hard to explain and I don't want to bother you guys with the math, but they only get to count half of their hours. Or they go pay out of pocket $200 an hour to a private practice supervisor. And so because we're offering clinical supervision, so I do that, we figured it out. It's one full day of my time. I mean, I don't do it all in one day, but because of that, we have people who are growing and learning, and I'm constantly growing and learning as a supervisor. And so it's one of the things that's really beneficial is that you all decided to have this position up here a couple years ago, and that makes a big difference. But you're right, Kalima, we need to work on, all of you mentioned it, what do we do when the grant's over? We'll work on it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9B, Administrative Regulation 5116, Ms. Baswina.
Good evening, President Tejada, members of the board. Before you today is the first read for Board Policy AR 5116, School Attendance Boundaries. It is being revised to include students living within the Bayshore Elementary School District attendance area and to guarantee their first choice of the 3 comprehensive high schools during enrollment due to their geographic isolation.
Questions here?
I'm glad we're doing it. I know this is something they've asked for. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay,
Um,
may I make a note? I'm sorry, I just noticed that it says 5116, and then on the actual document, it says 5166.
Oh, you're welcome.
And it is supposed to be 5116, so
Oh,
just want to note that we'll make that
All right,
correction.
make that correction.
Good eye.
Item 9C, Board Subcommittee for the 100th Anniversary of Jefferson High School and JUHSD. So as you all probably know, 2022 is the 100th anniversary of both Jefferson High School and the school district. And I thought maybe it would be, if you agree, a good idea for us to form a board subcommittee of 2 persons to work with staff in order to coordinate the celebrations of the district and of the high school. So I would like to be on that committee, subcommittee, And so then I'm looking for another board member to serve on that.
I'll volunteer just because then I can maybe drum up JCPTA as well. And
That's a great idea.
going, since they are part of the PTA, I'm sure they would love to be included as well. So,
Okay, great. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the 100th anniversary. I think there's a lot of things to celebrate and a lot of things that we should, I guess, look to the community to have input on this. Given there's a lot of alumni too, that certainly want to celebrate, who may or may not be in the immediate area still, but do want to be a part of it. So I guess my first question would be, do we, as a board, is it our role to be a subcommittee for, it reminds me of like graduations. It's something of a district function where our administration and staff already have a lot on their plate during COVID, but this is a subcommittee for essentially like something as a function of our school district as elected officials. I'm not sure if it's our role to form a subcommittee. Maybe we can just discuss it as a whole, as a board, at whatever meetings, the same way we have, reviews and discussions and information items about anything in our district. So,
This is a discussion item today.
yeah, it's a discussion item about forming a subcommittee, but I'm saying is, I don't think we necessarily should have a subcommittee. We should just discuss it as a full committee, as a full board. We have 5 board members, and some of us have actually gone to school here. So that to me, I think that to me is like, we're probably all going to have input on this, and subcommittees are only 2 members. I'm not sure that's the best way to get collective input from the board or the community. I would want to keep it as open as possible.
I think because it's a subcommittee, actually, I think what I appreciate about it is the fact that we can trust our subcommittee member to do the work, and at a future meeting, we bring it back for discussion or action as necessary. So for example, they might meet, a couple of times over the next month or so, and probably come back in early November, for example, with a report out on the status. I think and then we can discuss it and help refine whatever report that they report out at the time. So I think we will continue to be involved, Mr. Archifanti, but the legwork will be done by the subcommittee.
Well, I understand the logic behind it. I guess my thought is that a committee is always effective, right? You can have an effective committee. A committee can always be effective. I'm questioning if that's the role of the school board officials, or that's the role of maybe our communications director or somebody who does active work with all of our sites ongoing, and the kind of input from our students, really, who do it better than anybody else.
That's the kind of thing that, I recognize that our staff has a lot on their plates, but this is a really important milestone, right? So, like any of our other subcommittees, we have 2 members on it, and this would just be another one. And it would be the role of the subcommittee to, help with the planning, coordination, and get input, and decide who do we ask, that kind of thing, right?
No, that sounds like a good idea. I'm just questioning why we are the people who should be forming a subcommittee, because the role of a governing board is governance and oversight. We're not management, we're not operations in our district. We had a governance training recently, and so this will kind of fall in line with, I think a lot of people are experiencing PTAs, right? Myself as a teacher, we all have a lot to offer, I think, in our community.
Sure.
But I think we should complement the community and the school sites organizing around this, because they're the ones who are on our schools every day.
I totally agree.
So I think they should be leading it. I don't think we need a board subcommittee to direct it. I think we should be maybe we could ask the schools to form subcommittees of their own, and they can come together with the ASBs and all the student groups, and the students can kind of form it and be the voice for what that means 100 years later. Because without our students, we wouldn't be here, So I think that our role as a board is not to be a subcommittee for essentially a district function. And I say this as a teacher who is very active at any school I worked at. But
You're good.
But I think that's something that I think the idea of coordinating it and organizing it I totally agree with that. I just don't think we're the right people for that. I think we're always going to be here to hear it and create that space for that conversation, but we shouldn't be the ones guiding it or organizing it. It's really kind of out of balance in terms of our role as board trustees.
So I think, I hear that, in that, so similarly to like parcel taxes and stuff, it started with the board subcommittee, and then somebody else, like the last parcel tax started with a board subcommittee, and then it was handed off to somebody else to run. Like, it's got to get started somehow. So, and so I hear that. So what you're saying, like, with the formation of the subcommittee, part of their thing that the board could task them to do is to develop a hierarchy within it there's a leader that's not a board member.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, because you're bringing it up, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, thanks for the suggestion. I think actually making it as inclusive as possible maybe would be, it's important to get started. I think this conversation should start. I would even, our students, they, for example, with Jefferson High School, the process was that they should come up with a name for their mascot. Essentially, we should change that. So we did that. And because of the strength and the voice of the students, we made that happen. And that was, of course, a larger community and international conversation about what that means. With the 100th anniversary, it's a community-based thing that I think a lot of our community are aware of, but those who aren't, because some people don't realize that we started in 1922, right? So that would be something maybe for our teachers, maybe even just to like bring up, especially those of our teachers who work with students around these issues and the PTAs, and to, I mean, I would leave, I would ask what Superintendent Press thinks about this. I do think, in terms of our governance and our role, as though we can be effective, I think, in that. I don't think it's really in our front yard to do that. It's not really in our purview. But what do you think about that, Superintendent Press?
Well, I think.
Let me
Oh, sorry.
bring this in.
Yeah. So again, just to give context, the Jefferson mascot discussion started with a board subcommittee and then was handed off to the students. So, because I was on the board when that started. You weren't on the board yet when it started. You were on the board when it finished. But when it started with a board discussion saying we would like to change the Jefferson mascot. How do we do that? A subcommittee was formed, and then that committee decided to hand it off to the students to run. Just like, so I think that we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
That this is, how do we start that process? It has to start somewhere with our leadership guide. And then in the same way that we started a lot of other things, and then we've given it off to somebody else, and then they take it and run with it. So it could be student run. It could be community-driven run. It could have an outside community member that is the president or whatever of this subcommittee, and then have two board members that are part of it, because we should definitely be part of that conversation and organization. But it doesn't mean we have to run it. So, but it has to start somewhere. And so I hear everything you're saying, and I agree with everything you're saying. And I do think that it should, the major role of it should be outside, because we're all busy, we all have jobs. But we want to be a part of it. So I don't think what she's doing is going to not allow you to do what you're asking.
Okay, yeah, no, I hear it too. I just want to hear it.
Yeah, actually, I think we are kind of all in line on this one. I think that, I hear what you're saying, and I don't think that the board should be like running and doing all the daily tasks of it. I completely agree with that. I think that a board subcommittee is a good idea, but the board subcommittee should be working with staff and with community, with parents and kids. And my understanding is that there's already a group at Jefferson High School that's already started working on it, that includes parents and kids and teachers and administrators. Like, I think that they've already started working on it, and this was a way to make sure that we're bridging both. So I think that it is a good idea, and I don't think it's a good idea to just have two board members figure it all out and plan everything. And, you know, I do think that it will be like a collaborative effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I didn't know that it had already been started at Jeff.
Yeah, I think at Jefferson High School they have, yeah.
Yeah, which is obviously the flagship high school of the district. And so the other schools, though, obviously are as much a part of that as anything. So, yeah, I mean, if we can see, I guess, in maybe the next time we see this is kind of just like an outline or a brief delineation of where the community will be able to plug in and where those outlets are, so that the community is clear on how they can get involved and how they're centered in that. So.
That's good. Right,
So this is a discussion item, and
So I guess you just need to get direction.
yeah, it's just direction.
I think,
Works for me. I like it.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I like it. I like
okay,
it.
so Carly.
We're almost 100.
So do you want me to be on the committee? Yes, no?
Okay.
We're cool.
All right, just checking.
I'm not. That's fine. She said, it's okay, let me know if I want to be PO. Like, no, I object.
Right, she's objecting me.
Okay, item 10A, Human Resources. Ms. Lujan?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. This evening, the item for consideration is a variable term waiver for Blake Padawaran. He is a special education teacher at Westmore High School who's on an intern credential, but the intern credential expired. He is aware that this will give him 1 year, and he's fully aware of what he needs to complete within the next year to earn his preliminary credential. So we're asking for your approval of the variable term waiver.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your support.
Item 10A2.
The next item for your consideration, sorry, it's also me, is a stipend for the COVID annual mandated training modules for the unrepresented employees. Previously, at the prior 2 board meetings, you've approved a $300 stipend for AFT and then Teamsters. This would provide the equal stipend for employees who are not represented by a union.
Second.
Aye.
Thank you.
So item 10B1, Exhibit 3112.4, Williams Uniform Complaint Procedures. Ms. Basuino?
Yes, good evening. So this exhibit was updated to match the current language in the CSBA. During the federal program monitoring process, California Department of Education staff will check to ensure that a notice is updated and placed in each classroom. It is recommended that the board approve this policy update.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 10B2.
Education Code 35186 mandates that districts establish policies and procedures to address complaints regarding insufficiency of textbooks and instructional materials, teacher vacancy or misassignments, and emergency or urgent facility conditions that pose a threat to the health and safety of students or staff. This board policy must be updated prior to our federal program monitoring process. It is recommended that the board approve this policy update.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
10B3.
In this policy, the district identifies the persons, positions, or units responsible for ensuring compliance with applicable state and federal laws and regulations governing educational programs, including the receiving and investigating of complaints alleging unlawful discrimination and retaliation. This board policy must be updated prior to our federal program monitoring process. It is recommended that the board approve this policy update.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Finally, 10B4.
Last but not least, this policy addresses prohibited discrimination and violations of the state and federal laws governing educational programs. This policy must be updated prior to our federal program monitoring process. It is recommended that the board approve this policy update.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Basuino, for getting us up to date on our policies, for these policies. Let's see, item 11, consideration of future agenda items. No? Okay. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.